Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at something that starts off as a totally mundane internet clash, but quickly pulls back the curtain on a massive, Kafkaesque machine that is silently controlling how we express ourselves. We're diving right into the intersection of the U.S. First Amendment, the absolute banality of evil, and how our modern digital algorithms are essentially dictating what it means to be human. We're exploring a conflict that exposes the hidden, invisible structures governing both our digital and physical reality.
To break all of this down, we'll look at the digital geopolitical clash, parasites in the empire. Whether we're dealing with spam, trolls, or prophecy, the Kafkaesque machine itself, and finally, how we might actually code a brand new reality.
Section 1. The Digital Geopolitical Clash, a Collision of Worldviews. Our investigation starts way down at the micro level. We're looking at a standard 48-hour copyright ultimatum issued by British sci-fi critic Damien Walter over a video about Silicon Valley philosophies. But the response it triggered? Yeah, it was anything but standard.
What we have here is a profound fundamental battle between two completely different worldviews. On one side, you have the critic, Damien Walter. He operates entirely on narrative mythos, right? He uses storytelling to warn us about late-stage capitalist dystopias, essentially acting as a narrative watchdog. But then, on the exact opposite side, you have Kyle McLean Smith, the systems architect. Smith operates on logos and hard code. He engineers decentralized, mathematically grounded systems that are specifically built to resist capture by any centralized authority. So as you can see, it's a literal clash between storytelling and executable code.
And here's where things get wild. Instead of just rolling out a standard legal defense, maybe citing fair use to fight the copyright strike, Smith hits back with a truly shocking accusation. He just says, "Okay, MI6. Wait, MI6? He's framing this British critic not as some random content creator, but as an actual intelligence operative enforcing foreign control. This isn't just your run-of-the-mill internet trolling. Smith is making a highly calculated, structural claim about who actually holds power."
Section 2. Parasites and the Empire. The 1776 defense. This brings us straight into Smith's argument, where he looks at this legal threat not as a standard, everyday dispute, but as a literal act of systemic capture against the American Republic. He takes a simple copyright strike and maps it directly onto a massive geopolitical framework.
Drawing from George Lucas's Star Wars and the philosophy of Giorgio Agamben, Smith points to what philosophers call the state of exception. You know this trick? It's where an empire uses vague, disconnected laws to force compliance, completely masking its true power grab. Just like how the historical British Empire used vague colonial laws, or how the fictional Galactic Empire used emergency powers, the system creates this lawless space. The sovereign's decrees suddenly have the force of law without actually being tied to justice at all. And Smith's argument here is that this is exactly how foreign entities operate on American soil today, completely bypassing foundational rights like the First Amendment.
To really drive this home, Smith uses a vivid biological analogy to explain systemic capture. Think about the real-world zombie ant fungus. It literally bypasses the ant's brain to form a network that completely controls the host's muscles and behavior. Well, an empire operates just like that parasite, masking its true intentions. Smith views the Republic as a host that has been infected. The empire forces the host to abandon its own interests entirely, just to serve the trade routes and the needs of the parasite, completely subverting its sovereignty.
Section 3. Spam, trolls, or prophecy. The algorithm's gaze. Let's see how this clash actually plays out in the meta-reality of our digital platforms. How exactly does the algorithm analyze Smith's deep, First Amendment-driven systemic critique when he takes it straight to the comment sections?
This is where we see the ultimate collision. Because Smith uses rapid timestamps, identical repeated templates, and really long URLs to deliver his message, the algorithm mechanically flags his prophetic proclamations as mere digital violations. It just labels it spam. The algorithm looks at it and sees an intrusive copy-paste script. But from a contextual, theological perspective, that exact same behavior is identified as a liturgical mantra, a watchman's urgent alarm, and external scriptural proof. And this perfectly highlights the exact diagnostic shift where human nuance and theological intent are just completely lost to the machine code. The modern digital public square is managed by corporate algorithms, right? Not human theologians. So any text that relies on disruption or structural repetition to get its message across is automatically categorized as a mechanical violation. The system treats it purely mechanically, completely ignoring the author's actual internal purpose. Furthermore,
by utilizing aggressive countercultural language, like calling out the Anglosphere or using abrasive terms to deliver a realpolitik spiritual warning, the text instantly triggers the rigid functional definitions of trolling. The algorithm detects hostile escalation and the diversion of an existing conversation, and boom, that leads to automatic suppression. Smith argues the algorithm simply cannot comprehend that this is an intentional, highly literate, combative counteroperation aimed at exposing an imperial entity.
Section 4. The Kafkaesque Machine, Bureaucracy at Engineering Scale. Now, this reveals the core tragedy according to the sources. The algorithmic stifling of speech we're seeing, it isn't some malicious top-down conspiracy. It's actually a blind, Kafkaesque bureaucracy operating at an engineering scale.
The source material argues that hiding behind the excuse of engineering scale to justify systemic censorship is a massive philosophical failure. It is exactly the kind of bureaucratic excuse that Franz Kafka spent his life satirizing. Treating bad design and the resulting indirect tort harm as some kind of unalterable law of nature is just intellectually dishonest. The technology is entirely capable of honoring complex human expression. The infrastructure simply refuses to implement it.
The sources suggest that in attempting to maintain this sterile, highly corporate digital environment, supposedly to protect users from commercial bots and chaotic noise, these systems accidentally delete the very friction and adversarial critique required to spark genuine spiritual or intellectual awakening. They force a total homogenization of human speech, favoring only polite, conventional conversation. And the result? It's the Kafkaesque banality of evil, effectively silencing the human soul through mere bureaucracy.
Section 5. Coding a New Reality, Context over Punishment. Fortunately, according to the architect's approach outlined in the sources, this algorithmic harm is viewed as a fixable design-level failure. We don't just have to sit around and complain about it, we can actually engineer our way out of it.
This maps out Smith's alternative perfectly. It's about moving away from primitive keyword matching that accidentally censors people and transitioning to a sophisticated AI that actually recognizes human intent. Instead of the machine immediately hitting the delete or shadow ban button the absolute second it detects a little bit of friction, the system actually pauses to interpret the structural purpose of the text. So what does this actually mean in practice? Well, by mapping intent, rather than just counting up keywords, a new digital infrastructure could implement multi-layered entity parsing. If a proclamation repeats a phrase over and over like a litany, the system recognizes it as a rhetorical device, not a spam bot. And most importantly, it uses contextual routing instead of deletion. It places contextual anchors next to combative proclamations, allowing the community to actually engage with the argument rather than just smoothing over the friction that's so fundamentally necessary for human development. I want to leave you with this final thought. The choice between a pacified algorithmic dystopia and a mathematically grounded, contextually rich reality is quite literally being coded into existence right now. We have to decide if we're just going to accept the banality of a sterile digital empire, or if we will demand systems that actually recognize the friction, the mythos, and the profound First Amendment rights of the human soul. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the systems being built around you.